Hi, I'm Rich Laveau. At Bloomfield College, we believe all citizens need to be informed about the important issues that affect their daily lives. That's why we're proud to support programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by PNC Bank, Bloomfield College, offering small classes and big opportunities since 1868. United Water, making the planet sustainable is the best job on Earth. ENGLEWOOD Hospital and Medical Center, MD Advantage Insurance Company of New Jersey. Kessler Foundation, changing the lives of people with disabilities. And by United Airlines. Promotional support provided by The Record, North Jersey's trusted source, and NorthJersey.com. And by NJ Biz, all business, all New Jersey.
This is One-on-One.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
People like laughing at others, so I don't mind if the other is me.
See, you go right into the character. That's what it is.
I'm bringing families together a half an hour each week. Man, I'm doing something special.
And so I do feel successful.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. Welcome to the WNET Tisch studio here in the heart of New York City. It's my pleasure to welcome Brandon Webb, the author of a book called Among Heroes, a U.S. Navy SEAL's true story of friendship, heroism, and the ultimate sacrifice. Former Navy SEAL and SEAL Sniper Head Instructor. Good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
This book is a powerful book about?
It's about 8 teammates that I serve with since my time in the SEAL teams, and really just about me sharing my experiences and what I learned from serving with these amazing guys and trying to share their stories in a positive way that impacts people and gives them ability to improve their own lives.
You shared their stories, people like Glenn Doherty.
Yeah.
Tell everyone who Glenn was.
Glenn was one of my best friends. He's a guy from Boston that almost turned a professional as a skier, went into the Navy at 25, and we served at SEAL Team 3 together. We went to sniper school together. We surfed together, climbed mountains, flew planes together. We're both avid pilots, and you know, inside the Navy, outside the Navy, Glenn was just an amazing human being, and one of the 2 SEALs that gave their lives protecting the State Department diplomats in Benghazi, Libya. He was? Yeah.
With Ambassador Stevens?
Correct.
He was one of them?
Yeah, he was one of the SEALs.
T.J. Tummelson?
Yeah, JT, a lot of people will remember JT from that photograph of his chocolate lab Hawkeye that walked down the aisle and laid next to his coffin during the service. Just an amazing guy. JT was a class leader.
JT, not TJ.
Yeah,
JT. Yeah, that's him.
Yeah, JT was just one of the most stoic, quiet, professional people I've known, and was a favorite of mine. Was probably one of the best class leaders. As an instructor, we assign a senior student, and he was a class leader for one of my classes, and just an incredible human being.
Matt Axelson.
Matt, many people know Matt through the story that my friend Marcus wrote, Lone Survivor. Matt was one of the men on the hill that day that lost his life. Again, just one of the most talented students, and that I'd put through the sniper program. Always first to raise his hand and volunteer for something. Would never join in any of the kind of banter, the day-to-day banter, but guys just really respected him because of his accomplishments and his ability to be such a professional as a sniper and a team member.
What happened?
He was on that Operation Red Wings mission, and they were just outnumbered on the hill. And
they had no chance, did they?
No chance, just extremely outnumbered, outgunned. But, Matt was a guy that fought to the very end. His injuries, I remember we had interviewed one of the guys that had rescued him, the Air Force pararescue members, and they said it was just unbelievable that somebody had sustained the injuries that he had, was able to fire and maneuver And they made that observation when they recovered him on the hill a while later. But just an amazing guy.
Chris Campbell?
Chris was a small little guy, and we were in buds together. And I remember we found up, we'd both screwed something up during the diving phase of training, and we wound up in this.
Is that him?
Yeah, that's Chris. We wound up in this dip tank where we rinse gear off, and we were up to our necks in cold water, shivering at 2 in the morning. And I looked over, I was just miserable, and Chris just had this big smile on his face, and he was that kind of guy. He just was able to just cheer up anybody in the room, and regardless of the situation, how miserable it was, Chris was just always able to find, he'd just have a big grin on his face.
You know, writing this book, there are some who have argued that you have broken the code. You have broken the code, the SEAL code, of not talking as publicly as you've been talking about these things, you say.
Yeah, we have a SEAL ethos, which does apply, and I believe in when you're on active duty. But as long as, I have no problem when guys get out of the military and they submit the book for official Department of Defense review. I mean, that's what the review process is for, so guys can share the stories. And I think it's important that the stories are shared with America. You look at how many men and women we've lost since 9/11, and just amazing men and women. And if we don't share these stories and really show the sacrifice that these men and women have made themselves, and the sacrifice that their families have had to go through, I mean, how else are we going to, in America, learn and really acknowledge that?
But at the same time, you've also said, you told our producers, and you've also said that you're not a fan of, with our Navy SEALs, with those who have served as SEALs, creating them as mythical figures and such heroic figures that they become so distant to us.
I think it's important to show, and what I try to do in Among Heroes is really show the human side of these guys, that we aren't.
Why do we need to know that? Why can't we just look at them as extraordinary heroes who are so unlike the rest of us? Well,
I think the extraordinary part is there, but people need to understand, like, these were small children that were raised by incredible parents, and how they grew up and experienced life, and had they been around, what would they still be doing? Like my friend Chris Cassidy now, was a platoon commander of mine in Afghanistan, who's one of the 2nd Navy SEAL astronauts. So, these just amazing people, but also showing the human side of them, and that the families that are still here and dealing with a lot of grief and suffering. And I think America just needs to those stories need to be shared so they have a deeper appreciation of the sacrifice.
What does it take to be a SEAL?
What does it take to be a SEAL? I think it just takes tremendous mental toughness. It truly is. As much as you look at the physical requirements, it would make a normal person take a second glance, but it really is.
I was on my stair stepper today. Am I good?
No.
No, I knew you were going to say that. I mean, we laugh at that, right?
Yeah, I mean, we run probably 15 miles a day just to eat back and forth. So
we have no idea, do we?
It's just, but it's mental. It truly is mental. Yeah. That's why people ask me about women serving the SEAL teams, and I have no doubt in my mind that there are women that have the mental toughness to make it through.
Talk about mental toughness, real quick. It takes leadership, too. What's the #1 leadership lesson you've learned in your life as a SEAL?
That excellence matters, and that it is a choice. I was interviewed by the Harvard Business Review the other day, and they asked me any advice I could give for companies that want to train to just moderation, and I said, look, that's not in my DNA. Like, we aren't about that. We train to a very high standard. That way, when the guns start going off, you fall back to a very, very high level of training capability.
Give me 30 seconds on Chris Kyle.
Chris Kyle, I first met Chris when he was a new guy at SEAL Team 3, and we've got a couple Texans in the SEAL teams, and those guys are hard to miss, and just a larger-than-life character, loved by everybody.
Did the movie get it right, American Sniper?
I was pretty harsh on the movie from a technical point of view, but as far as the movie showing the sacrifice and the tough situations these guys are under, expected to make perfect decisions under incredibly tough situations, and then how it affects the families back home. I think the movie nailed it.
Brandon Webb, the author of Among Heroes. I want to thank you for joining us and sharing a very powerful and important story. Appreciate it during the public television
Thanks
family.
for having me.
Stay right there. One-on-one will continue in the heart of New York City right after this. Thank you very much.
To see more One-on-One with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD, and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
The public television family welcomes our friend from the other side, the radio side. Ophira Eisenberg is the host of NPR's Ask Me Another and the author of a wonderful book called Screw Everyone, Sleeping My Way to Monogamy. You're also a comedian, you're talented. Look at that, I love the title. Look at Screw Everyone. Where'd you come up with that title?
I spent a lot of time coming up with that title, actually. I finished the book. They were like, we need a great title. And I was like, okay, we had some working titles, and they wanted something to stand out. So I sat there, and it was actually a friend of mine who I said, I don't even know what they want anymore. I should just tell them to go screw themselves. And she goes, well, that's what you did. And I was like,
what do you mean that's what you did? What do you mean that's what you did?
Well, because I had a lot of relationships.
You did?
Yes. I mean, you know, it depends who you talk to.
I'm talking to you. I'm asking you.
So everyone has a different thing of what they think a lot of relationships equals.
Yes.
So, you know, whatever. I wrote a book about it. If you tally up the numbers, some people think it's extraordinarily modest, and other people go, well, that seems like quite a lot. So it just depends who you talk to. I've had people say, honey, you've got nothing on me. I've heard that quite a few times. I'm like, all right.
They're not impressed.
Yeah, they're not impressed.
I was impressed by what I heard.
Thank you.
But it's so interesting, sleeping your way to monogamy.
Yes. How? Why?
Yeah,
How
both.
and why?
Was that what your goal was?
I had no goals. I am not a
Monogamy is not your goal.
I mean, currently it is my goal.
It would be a good idea. Because?
Because I am married.
Same here. I'm working on the same. Isn't that?
Yes.
It's helpful.
So, yes, if that's the decision the two people make, you gotta.
Yes.
You enter into the contract, and that's the way to go.
Yes.
Plus, I think it would. I don't know, 2 people? That sounds exhausting to me, to be quite honest.
To be involved with 2 people.
Yeah. Oh my, 2 people yabbering all the time? No.
So that no, yeah.
Laundry, forget it.
Yeah, but the sleeping. Seriously, you had to sleep your way to that?
Well, I mean, I got to a point. I got to a point where I think with the numbers, it was like an experiment. So I gathered a large sample size to be able to figure out.
You're a researcher.
What I wanted. Yeah. So I didn't really know what I wanted. So I went out there and I was like, I'll find out what I want. And then I was like, not this. Okay, a little bit of that. And sooner or later I was like, oh, I understand what I want.
And what you didn't want.
And well, that is the big thing, right? And then I found someone that I was like, hey, this is sort of what I want.
Did you tell your husband that he was part of the experiment?
Well, he knows now.
It worked. Hey, what's The Moth?
The Moth is a storytelling organization that actually started in New York. I mean, it's people going up on stage and telling true stories from their life, 5-10 minutes, sort of in that amount of time. And they're usually the live shows are organized around themes. And it's something that grew in New York over the last 15 years from literally being in someone's living room to now a podcast and a radio show that is all over the country, shows all over the world, and also a best-selling book. So, but it really is just as simple as people.
You've participated in this.
Yeah, I host
Do we have a clip?
Shows.
Let's go to the clip. Is this a clip of you?
It is a clip of me, I believe.
As part of The Moth.
Yeah.
Talking about a very powerful story.
Yeah, very sad story. Very, very sad story about a car accident that I survived when I was a kid. And there's stories at The Moth that are poignant and heartbreaking and tragic, but there's lots of funny stuff.
Well, this is your story.
But this is a one that's very sad.
Let's go to the clip.
Adrian's mother would visit me a lot, too, along the way. And I would always ask her, like, why aren't you bringing Adrian? I want to see Adrian. But somehow she would just change the subject, and I would go with it. Finally, one day when I was strong enough, I just wouldn't let it go. I was like, why won't you bring her to play with me? And her and my mother looked at each other, And they said, we think that you're healthy enough to hear this now. But remember, when you described being unconscious, it felt like you were sleeping for a really, really long time. Well, Adrian never woke up. I heard what they were saying, but I don't think I got it. I mean, I don't think my 8-year-old brain could comprehend that. I didn't cry because I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that I should stop asking for Adrian.
Adrian was.
Yes, Adrian was my friend, my elementary school and childhood friend. So I was in this very terrible car accident. I was lucky enough to survive it with some considerable operations, and I lost spleen and had a lot of bad things. But she wasn't lucky enough to survive it. And it was, you know, it's a compelling story in my life, and it's something that I think about all the time, because these things that happen to you that are tragic or huge, even when they're happy and amazing, they impact who you are considerably and change the way that you look at the world.
You come out of a clip like that, you're telling it, it's your life, it's not ours. And then I introduced you in the beginning as a comedian. Yeah, I know. I know, and it's interesting too, because that was really the first time that I did something that was sad, performed something sad. And it took a lot of time to even get to the point where I wanted to do that. And even when I was actually performing that piece, just working so often in comedy, it was hard to not have that feedback from the audience. At first, I was like, why aren't they laughing? And then I remembered, because there's nothing to laugh at. But then you feel something very different. And, you know, there's a catharsis, of course, in telling a story that is personal to you and having that being communicated. But there's something very lovely when people afterwards, they've heard something about their life. They've heard, they remember a moment where they were brave. They go to a place where they relate to you that you would have never anticipated. And I feel like that's what the power of that medium is. The other medium, real quick, before I let you out of here, on the NPR side, talk about your show real quick. Yes, it's called NPR, it's on NPR. It's called Ask Me Another. It's a trivia comedy show. Just another random thing to add. Well, you're an eclectic guest, that's all I'm going to say. Eclectic. Ask me another what? Exactly, that's it. Then we ask you another trivia question. Sometimes they're word games, sometimes they're music games. About anything? Pop culture, some geography, some television, movies, like word games that are just like weird takes on, we make people mash up different words together to create new words. So if I called, I just would ask about The Godfather. Oh, that's your mode? That's my milieu. So we have contestants that come on stage. It's a live show at the Bell House. And so you could be a contestant, you could come on, we could have a Godfather quiz, the entire thing. You wouldn't get me. You have all these Italians in the audience. I'm not saying others as well, but disproportionately Italians. Screw everyone. Yes. I'm just saying. It's fantastic, right? Sleeping my way to monogamy, which I will tell you is a great philosophy in life that we live by, do we not? That's right. We share something in common. Let's shake on that. And your husband, part of your experiment, it all worked out. Yeah, and he likes the book, so, you know. He likes the philosophy as well. That's great. Yeah. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us on the television side. My pleasure. Our friends best to our friends on the NPR side. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this. Did you have fun?
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD, and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
The public television family is pleased to welcome Mr. Chris Frederick, who is the managing director of Heritage of Pride and NYC Pride. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited for Pride Week.
Yeah, let folks know what Pride Week is.
Pride Week is the largest LGBT celebration in the country. We're talking 2 million people. We have over 11 events for this 1 week. And, you know, it's a celebration of who we are as a culture, as a community, where we've gone, where we're headed, and it's just a really great time.
You know, we're taping this program at the WNET studio on June 25th, 2015. Anything happening in the Supreme Court?
Yeah, they're going to decide the state of same-sex marriage this week, I think.
What does that mean to you?
You know, I think that it's just been a battle that the LGBT community has faced for so many years. I think that we're finally getting the rights we deserve, and I think we're pretty optimistic that the Supreme Court is going to rule in our favor.
You are?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that it's time, and the Supreme Court realizes that it's only a matter of time that LGBT rights are given to be able to love whoever you want to love. So,
if it didn't happen, shocked?
I would be a little shocked. I think that you know, the Supreme Court knows that it is really only a matter of time. So if it doesn't happen now,
not if.
Yeah.
It's a when.
It's a when. I think that it's going to happen eventually. You know, you see the tide change over just the last 5 years with states kind of opening it up. So I think they need to address it and talk about it on a federal level. So
how does it? Let me ask you something. With all the changes taking place, and I disclosed to you, I told you in a different life, as a state representative, a state legislator in New Jersey, before I got into broadcasting, I was the sponsor of what was known as the Gay Rights Bill in New Jersey, which all it said was expand, you couldn't discriminate against someone based on sexual orientation for housing and employment. And there were like 4 votes for it.
Right.
Couldn't get it passed, couldn't get it considered, and 9 years later it passed. And I thought to myself, boy, have we come a long way. And so here's the point of the question. Given where we were, given where we are, and given where we're hopefully going to go, is there much left to fight for?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that it turns into more of an international focus than a national focus.
Why is that?
Because there are, you know, over 70 countries that still legalize, you know, same-sex love. And there are people being put in jails because of who they love. And so it's important to not get this desensitized that, oh, we have all the rights that we deserve. I think that there are millions of people around this world that still suffer. And even here in the United States, you have trans issues that are kind of coming up to the forefront that need to be addressed. I think that trans issues are finally getting their moment.
Transgender issues.
Correct. You know, I think that people are starting to realize that it's a group that needs to be respected, that need to have the same rights as all of us, and it's kind of the last remaining group that need full equal rights.
Caitlyn Jenner mean much to you?
Yeah, I mean, she was an inspiration to millions. You know, you saw 16 million people tune in for that event, and
the Diane Sawyer interview.
Yeah, and I think that you know, anything that can raise awareness on the issues, I think is great, and I think that you know, it helped a lot of people, I think, understand what it means to be trans in America today.
So if Caitlyn Jenner has a reality series and moves forward and, you know, does what she does and, you know.
Right.
Does that help in your view? Obviously, it depends upon what happens in that reality series, but does it help the cause?
I think it helps the cause just because it's giving transgendered people the platform to really understand what it means to be transgendered in America, you know, no matter who it is.
Is that separate than what it means to be gay?
I think so. I think
you do.
I think it's a different experience, you know, and that's what's interesting is over the last, I think, 10 to 20 years, it used to be the gay community, and now it's the gay, the lesbian, the bisexual, the transgendered, the queer, the allied. There's
but you're calling it a community, the LGBT community.
Correct.
But it's not really,
But they have shared experiences, but they're very different.
All being discriminated against, but in different ways.
Correct. Because you can't expect a gay man to be able to relate on a transgender female experience. So I think that's one reason why different segments within the community have popped up over the last 20 years, because you're seeing more people wanting to have a voice about their experience.
So go back to NYC Pride. Great organization doing important things.
Yeah.
You've made a big difference. The rest of us who don't fit into that community, but are supportive in a lot of ways. A lot of folks come and support it.
Yeah.
Talk about them.
I mean, it's interesting. We did a study last year, and we found that about 27% of attendees were straight white women. Straight
white women.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
I think that you're seeing that more and more in these events. Is just people want to celebrate LGBT culture, and I think that I oftentimes get the question of, is Pride going to go away as we have equal rights? And I don't think that's ever going to happen.
You don't see it?
No, because I think that at the end of the day, these events help to celebrate and remind people who we are as a community, and that's super important. You know, it's super important to kind of keep true to the heritage of what it means to be LGBT.
Well, you're doing a great job here on public television, keeping the cause alive, and we thank you for being with us and being an advocate. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That was great.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by PNC Bank, Bloomfield College, United Water, Englewood Hospital and Medical Center, MD Advantage Insurance Company of New Jersey, Kessler Foundation, and by United Airlines. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
Choosing a new family doctor can be confusing. Check with your health insurer to see which physicians near you participate with your plan. Find out which hospitals the doctor uses and who covers when the doctor is away. And remember to schedule an appointment with your new doctor in advance to fill out any paperwork without the added stress of being sick.